Too much detail, but when I was growing up, my mom, she wasn't like, she was there, but far as like to give me advice to like maneuver through life, she really wasn't there. We learned everything as I went along from my mistakes and, you know, just learning. So when I had my daughter, I promised myself that I would teach her, like I teach her about self-care, about guys, about sex, about loving herself, about how to treat other people.
In a similar situation, especially since, you know, as teenagers, we think our mothers don't know nothing, don't say nothing to me.
Don't say nothing.
You're not for me, you're against me. That's
I
how
don't
we
even
feeling
know.
right there.
I don't even know what you like.
But now, right. But now we know.
It was to a point where like, yeah, now we know, like, okay, mama was looking out.
Right.
But even then, in certain stances, like, I just didn't, like, I was speaking with my mom, I was doing interviews also with the women in my family, you know, just to get their history, you know, because it's good to know these things, like, right. What
that's
you
went through. Idea, actually.
Yeah, I did that, and don't worry, that's coming soon. But I told her that I was angry with her and I was angry with God, which played a major part in my distance from her and my disrespect towards her. Because I, like, anything that, like, me and her, we went through, like, any type of argument or anything, I got some lady in the church coming to me, talking to me, and I'm just like, Ma, why are you telling people what we going through? Like, these people not your friends. Like, then that's what I'm saying in my head. And I'm young and you old, and I'm like, you don't see that they just want to know that your life ain't as glitz and glam as you may perceive it to be. And that's one thing that I always, like, I think that's one thing that she tried to shy me away from, is, like, just being myself. Like, every time I went to church, I would see everybody all dressed up, all looking like everything's all perfect and things like that. And in my head, I just felt it. Like, one thing about me, I've always felt energy. I've always felt how things really are. I see things that people can't see. So, like, I'd be like, Ma, why are you telling her this? Like, she don't care. She just wants to be okay with about the things that are going on in her life because, okay, somebody else is down. So I can focus on their stuff and make their life seem like it's way worse than mine is. Because you're sharing things with them, but they're not sharing anything with you. It's the difference between, like, actual friends working together and, you know, balancing out things like issues that you're having with your children. Because right now, like, if I had, like, I have a 3-year-old and he is off the hook. And I go to my friends about it. I don't go to random people about my child's attitude and things like that, like, because I know that's not the true help. So me and my mom's relationship was bad, like, to the point I didn't even want her to touch me. Like, I don't want you near me. Like, I don't want to listen to you. All my friends can go out. I can't stay out. All my friends have a phone. I don't have a phone. All the everything and stuff like that. But now that I'm older, I see that she was doing everything in her power just to protect me and to love me and provide for me. Like, she was really trying to save my life.
Well, growing up as a teenager, I was really close with my mother. She raised me as a single parent. My dad was not around. I would see him maybe once a year. So basically, my mother, she was like my best friend. I learned a lot from her. She was a strong, independent woman. And we just had a really good relationship, to be honest with you. She was not a strict parent. She taught me to be really independent, which I think helped our relationship. I don't feel like we had, I don't know, I don't want to say we had an open line of communication, because she was raised where, you know, you didn't discuss certain things. But I think I really learned a lot from my mother just by watching her. And she didn't really say much, but her actions always spoke louder than her words.
My mom and my dad divorced when I was 6. My dad was quite the provider, and I would say that from what I remember, as a matter of fact, my mom was extremely young when she got with my dad. I think she was like 18, and he was in his 30s. Mm-hmm. And, I just remember, him having this amazing home that we lived in. I remember he worked for Southern Bell back in Atlanta, which is now AT&T. Right. So it's amazing how time flies and just all that kind of stuff. But I do remember the arguing at night or the yelling at night and the stories that I would hear, not necessarily maybe from other people in the family. My dad's doing this to my mom or whatever the case is. And so at the age of 6, I do remember them getting a divorce, and that we actually went to go live in a shelter for a while for women and children who were abused. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just really interesting because I never saw it, but I kind of knew it was happening. Right. So my dad was there, but then he became not there. I remember him wanting to be there. I remember him coming to the apartment where my mom lived and she not wanting to do anything to do with him. I remember one time being at school or somewhere on top of bars and him coming and grabbing me and my sister and running off, and then the police had to come get us because technically he stole us. It didn't register in my mind, but that was what was going on. And then also all of my mother's family or the people around me really kind of gave me this insight of my dad not necessarily being all there or not being a good person. Mm-hmm. So that was my experience of my dad growing up. And then my mom died. And they hadn't been together. I don't even think he knew that she died. Mm-hmm. And again, this is me like working backwards because, you were young, you don't really know.
Okay, so I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, Richlands, town of Perth Water. And I grew up with both my parents in a Christian household. So they were very positive. I always tell my parents, I tell people my parents encouraged me and told me that I could do anything. And that's one thing that I've kept with me. If my mama said I could fly, my daddy said I could fly, you better believe I can fly. Right. I'm jumping off somebody's roof, okay? Because I can do it, because my parents said it. So they were very encouraging, very smart. I always look to them as smart. They were smart in different ways. They were both book smart and had life experiences. Both of their parents, similar background, were sharecroppers. And my grandmother on my mother's side, she was the housekeeper. And my grandmother, I'm not sure what she did on my dad's side. Right. But I know his father was a sharecropper, so very humbling backgrounds. My grandparents had not high school education, so dropped out before high school. So, and they're raising, these successful people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a very, very humbling experience, and it was fun. Right. So I think as a result, my parents gave me things that they didn't have. Which I appreciated. I was very, very grateful for everything I had. Mm-hmm. A yard, a house.
Did you feel like they were strict? Did you feel like you looked around and there was things you couldn't do that others were doing?
Yes, don't you know I could not have phone calls from boys. Not that this was like everything.
No,
I'm
as a teen though.
As a teen, right. Like I could not have phone calls from boys. Like little boys would call my house and my mom would be like, "Oh, you want to speak to Jennifer?" Oh, she's not accepting phone calls from boys. Right. I'm like, man, hold on.
Right.
I've had that question asked before, and I really don't think so. The reason that I don't think so is because he wasn't there. I wasn't missing anything. So I didn't really, and then the environment that I grew up in, most of my friends didn't have a father in the home. So I remember when I met my husband, my now husband, who, he was raised with both parents. And I found it strange, when he told me that both his mother and father were, in the home. And I was really, it was kind of a shock to me. So I don't think I grew up with daddy issues because of that, because I didn't know what I was missing. I was just used to it just being me and my mother. And the only thing that I do feel that affected me was I don't like being disappointed, because my father disappointed me a lot in my life. So I don't like being disappointed. So, which causes me not to ask people to do anything for me. It kills me to have to ask someone, can you do something? Because I don't like being disappointed. So I would rather just sit back and not ask and just, do what I have to do on my own. And again, because my mother was the same way. She was very independent as well. So I didn't see her asking anybody for help. It's hard. It's not good, but
feel about that though? Do you want your girls? Do you want that to go down another generation? Do you want them to not? You want them to feel the same way, or do you want them to feel comfortable coming to you?
No, I want them to feel comfortable coming to me. I feel like they are. I feel like mainly with my oldest daughter, she comes to me for help. My youngest one, she's a little more independent. But I do want them to feel like they can come to me for anything. I try to keep the line of communication open, because I don't think it's good to feel like you can't ask for help. I think that's a bad way to go through life. But I do want my girls to be independent and self-sufficient and do what they need to do, but still feel comfortable asking for help as a last resort. But I want them to be able to fend for themselves and take care of themselves, the way that my mom raised me to be as well.
So I want to know how you step up in your daughter's lives to ensure they won't look for love in the wrong places,
right,
and just showing them the example of a true.
So my daughter, for example, doesn't live with me all the time. She lives with her mom sometimes. She lives with me sometimes. But when she's with me, I try my best to let her know who I am. Meaning, she knows what I do for a living. She knows what I like. She knows the movies. She knows my favorite color. She knows the type of music I listen to. She knows what I write about. She knows what books I'm reading. She knows what video games I play. So I share as much as I can about me. Understand that I'm not just one image of dad, the superhero. I'm dad, who is this multifaceted person that has all these different things that he's interested in. And this is what a real man looks like. This is what all the men she's going to encounter will have. The only issue is whether they're willing to share it or not. But me sharing minds and showing her who I am, I think allows us to find common ground in a lot of different things. So even if it's that she doesn't like the same music, we can still talk about music. Maybe she doesn't like the same movies, we can still talk about movies. So me talking to her, communicating with her, sharing with her, I think is extremely important, because that, I think, is what you add on the foundation of love. It's all these different layers of experiences and history and conversations and really love. And I've seen it in my own daughter's, just our own relationship, because I think the more I got to the point as a man where I was able to communicate and share, the more tightly our relationship got.
So I had a pretty healthy relationship with my parents. My parents really did their best. Even bringing generational curses and how they talked to us and loved up on us. My father tells us all the time, how he actually made intentional strides to be a different dad, to make sure we were affirmed. And he didn't learn this. It's not like he learned it from his dad. He learned it on the fly, but then also because he was really big in his faith walk, right? My mom, super nurturing and protective. Super nurturing and protective. No, she was known to be the mom that's no, my kids can't be around you if I'm not here. She unapologetically did. No, my kids can't. She was so nurturing and protective.
when they moved us out here in Randallstown, like, it was a big deal. Like, they were super young, bought a house, and my father decided that, like, he wanted us to have a different, like, lifestyle. He was real big on making sure that I was, like, comfortable with who I am, even culturally. Like, one time he actually went up to a school. It was, like, 3rd grade. One of the teachers, we was on a poem, acrostic poem. And for A, I wrote African American. And she was like, no, actually, you're an American. You don't need to be a. He went to school and was like, don't tell my daughter she's not black. But she can't be African American. Like, that's how, like, passionate he was about making sure that I was comfortable about who I was. I tried to cut my eyebrows off, girl, y'all, and lied about it to them. Mind you, thick eyebrows are in. Because somebody teased me at school and I lied to him about it. That was one thing they were, like, big on. Don't lie to us. Like, we created, like, you get a beating for lying. Like, I lied a lot, though. Now when I think about it, I lied a lot. And I've been thinking, like, why? Like, and it always has something to do with so this is interesting. Everything I lied about was connected to an experience where I wasn't comfortable with myself. So whether it was boys who I shouldn't have been dealing with, who I probably was only dealing with because they made me feel good. Whether it was like me, you know, trying to do something with my body because I wasn't comfortable with it or somebody told me. Which is, I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, they make sure you feel good about yourself and what they can do. Yet you do very specific things because you don't feel good about yourself. That's why it's not all just parents. Like, it's like work. Like, it's not just parents. That's a big factor. I don't know what else they could have done to make me feel good or not do some of the stuff I did. I don't know what else better they could have done. That stuff was just me. That's why I do think, that's why this is society. That's why stuff like this is important, because sometimes you don't want to hear it from your parents. You don't want to hear it from your parents, right? Or you don't want to process things with your parents, you know, or maybe you can't afford therapy. Like, therapy wasn't even a thing back then, right? That's why this is so important now that I think about it, because you need somebody else to just be like, how you feel is valid, right? How you feel is valid. So maybe if I would do something different, like maybe making sure I think about it. Like, for me, I want to make sure my kid has that, right? I don't know what that looks like yet, but I want to make sure that just me pouring into him and his dad pouring into him isn't the only thing. Like, that's not enough.
And save me from things that she potentially, like, couldn't save me from. So, like, at the end of the day, she couldn't save me from certain things. So I appreciate her, and I just wish that, like, if you were going through something with your mom, like, it's gonna be healing for both of y'all. You really have to sit down and communicate and comprehend everything that is going back and forth. Like, no yelling, like, truly. And even if like, one thing that I wish that I did younger was write down how I feel. Read it, and it'll be a moment where you're like, do I want to share this with my mother? Can I share this with my mother? And if you can, share it. If not, just rip it up, pray about it, and let it go. But one thing that you really need to know is that your mom has your best interest at heart. And if your mom truly does, she will learn how to understand you more. Because it's also, she has to do work also. She has to learn to understand. Just like right now, our mentality is nowhere near where it was when it was 16. My mentality is nowhere near what it was when I was a teenager. I think about totally different things. Like, when I was a teenager, I was thinking about trying to get tattoos of stuff that Lord knows I would not get tattoos of now. I'm not saying I don't have tattoos, but I have tattoos. But certain things that we were thinking about when we were younger, like, I want my piercings. I want everything. Like, it's not. When it's time is when it's the best time. Like, when it's not rushed. That's like when you put, like, if you put a cake in the oven, if you take it out too early, you're going to be mad because you can't put it back in and let it stay a little longer. No, you got to redo it all. And you got to redo the work all over again. You got to measure everything out again. You got to mix everything together to the perfect consistency again when you could have just waited. So patience is also what it takes when dealing with your mother at a teenage year, because you have a lot of influence in school and everything of people telling you, well, oh, your mother don't let you do that. Wow, my mom lets me do that. And then you look 10 years later and you realize, dang, your mother shouldn't have been letting you do that. Like, because my mom was looking out for me at the end of the day. Yeah, I was in church Tuesdays, Fridays, Sundays, and Saturdays. But she was looking out for me the best way that she knew how at that moment. And if you feel as though it's a different route that she can take that would help you better understand, let her know that.
Just thinking about the fact that in my eyes, my dad was this person that I needed to stay away from because that's what had been communicated to me. When my mom died, I moved back with my grandmother. He started trying to come around, and again, I don't know what was in the head of the adults in the room, but they, started letting him ease in a little bit. I remember he would buy me shoes. He would do all these kind of things, and I was just like, "Oh, great!" And I felt it was amazing. At a certain point, when I started getting in trouble around that 15-year-old age, I actually went to go stay with him. I don't know. My dad was, to me, kind of an awkward guy. His favorite thing to say was that the system broke up his family. Didn't really understand what that meant, but that was his favorite thing to say.
And you said you grew up as a Christian teen.
Yes, Christian.
So how did you feel when you looked around and saw like the world was different? Like, was it hard for you not to conform to like what the world was doing and what your friends were doing? Or was it easier for you to just be like, okay, I'm a Christian, I know I can't do this, so I'm not going to do it? Or how was that for you?
I think because I had other friends who had similar backgrounds, we all kind of found our path. So we would want to do what's popular. And I mean, we did sometimes because we had stuff we had no business doing. But I think that part of us, like, bring it back because, God won't be pleased and our parents are going to kill us. So I think knowing that other people were doing it too and they had the same religious background made it okay for me.
So talking now, that's as a teen. So now, is it more that it's more important to have like a relationship, your own relationship, than like the religion? Because I think that puts like pressure on kids, like as a teen.
It sure does, because this relates to now, and I'm going to connect them back. But I remember our church was doing a fast, and my mom was saying, you don't have to fast if you don't want to. You don't do it because, we're all doing it. And I was like, no, because that's what they said, and I'm going to do it. So fast forward, I'm like, oh, you were right. Because the relationship with God is so personal, because everybody's journey is their journey. I face different demons that I swore I'd never face as a child, my aspirations, And now I'm like, well, Lord, you got me. Like, I can't put it into words, but I know. And, he knows his children. He knows his children. He knew we were going to be hard-headed. He knew we were going to make things okay that we know are not okay if we live biblically. And have these experiences that can make us downtrodden. But we keep pressing through.
Grace.
Yes, all the time. Thank you for your grace and mercy.
I had like a 2-year didn't talk to my dad. And I was a teenager.
Of course, it's when we teens, girl.
I was a teenager.
So do you think that even though that was a small time, 2 years, to not talk to your dad, do you feel, what daddy issues are, do you feel like you had any of that when you were choosing like guys that you would talk to, or were you looking for that love that you weren't like talk about that?
Because even though I talked to my dad wasn't in the house. My mom and dad divorced when I think I was 6. It was infidelity and things like that. So, but when I was 6, I didn't know that that's what it was. So once I actually found out what it was is when I stopped talking to my dad. And now, as I'm older, I realize that it broke him in a sense. But I'm not angry at him anymore. But definitely when I was dealing with guys and things like that, I definitely was searching for something that I was missing from my father. Like, yes, he would call me. Yes, he would pay his child support. Yes, he would come see me every now and again, try to come get us on the weekends and things like that. But I needed my dad. I feel like every girl needs their daddy. Like, and now, like, I love that man so much. Like, when I actually sit back and look and think about all the sacrifices, like, and I talk about it to my friend all the time, but like, nobody love you like your daddy. Like, especially if you've had, like, so I feel for girls who didn't have a father at all or didn't have any connection, because even though my father wasn't, I'm not saying he's perfect, but he's definitely the most loving man I know, which is why I sympathize sometimes with men when they're going through certain things, because I know my dad sacrificing this, that, and third. I feel for him. I feel my dad talking. I feel the fact that, like, my dad, like, he gave up being in the Marines. He gave up his dream to raise his children.
He was also one of those dads that, you know, we were in the car with him and he saw a piece of furniture on the side of the road. He's like, let's go get it. And he's so embarrassed. If I was playing sports and if a basket didn't hit, did you have a BM today? So embarrassing. So anyway, he was just an awkward kind of thing. So it was just kind of building a relationship with someone who was kind of from the outside. And then having the influence of others. It was just an interesting period of life. I actually started getting really close with him in my early 30s. Interestingly enough, not even living in the same state. Mm-hmm. He was still in Georgia. I was here. You know, I would talk to him on the phone. You know, we connected on football a lot. We were Falcons fans. Mm-hmm. So we would talk about the games on Sunday and, you know, just things of that nature. And the more I talked to him, the more I learned there was so much we had in common.
Right.
And so the thing I think I would remember the most that stands out is that my dad used to, every month with his Social Security check, every month like clockwork, he would put $100 in my credit union account. I had a credit union at a Georgia credit union. He would go put $100 in there. His thing was, make sure that you change your oil, baby, and, you know, all these kind of dad things. And I didn't realize how much I appreciated it until after he died. Mm-hmm. He died, I want to say, in 2012.
Even though he couldn't be in the household, he gave up his dream. And I think about that now, especially now that he's older. Like, you can't go back to the Marines. You can't do all the things that you wanted to do when you were younger. The things that you dreamt about, you couldn't sleep about. You can't do those things now. And I thank him for the sacrifices that he made, which is why I'm so protective over him. It's ridiculous. Like, no, don't. Like, even when it came down to him dating, like, oh no, none of the women he could, especially the woman that, like, came, like, right after my mom, oh no, I would, like, give her hell to the point. And it's like his wife now, though, I love her. I respect her because I know that she not out to hurt my dad. And that's all I care about. Like, I felt like when he made certain decisions that he made, he was hurting. So I just didn't want him to hurt. So when I met her, you know, at first I was giving her a little bit of, you know, push, see what she doing. But then I was just like, she really loved my dad.
That dad is trying
Mm-hmm.
to be in their life, and maybe it's something going on between the parents, or just speak from a dad's point of view to that child who feels like they're not just like wanted or loved by. Mm-hmm. They don't have, you know, their dad.
That's tough for me because it's just not how I feel, you know. Mm-hmm. But I would say this, though, especially just talking about men and, you know, the struggles that men have to deal with, you know, whether they're struggles that I've been through myself or I've seen other guys go through. I think that it's important to note that they're struggling too. You may be struggling because, as a teenager, because you're looking for a certain love and certain type of relationship with your dad. I'm sure that person is also struggling. They may not show it. They may not be obvious, but they're definitely struggling. And I would never say to give up on that. I don't think we should give up on human beings in general. I think that everybody has an opportunity to change. Everyone has an opportunity to change from the decisions that they've been making into something new. And have some faith. Try to keep reaching out as much as possible. I would say that probably gets tiresome after a while. So, and I definitely understand that. But I just feel that sometimes it takes a while for people to mature and to realize the error in their ways. If it's something that that person has done and they haven't corrected it, maybe give them some time and maybe they will. But also, I think there are also people that maybe never get a chance to correct it. And in those cases, forgive them. Realize that, like all of us, we are human. We make mistakes, and that's okay, because we can forgive them for that and still love them for it.
So I feel like if you have a father figure, make sure it's the right one. Make sure he respects you. Make sure he treats you like a queen. People, often black girls, they feel like they spoiled, like being spoiled is a bad thing, when it's not, when it's done right. Like, my dad never had to beat me. I think he beat me once and he cried about it. So like, it's certain things that you just don't want to like the men in your life, like it plays a major part in your dating. It plays a major part in your dating. So, which is why I dated like Eli's father. Like, he was just out of jail, like maybe like 5 years. Like, he was, you know, I'm thinking about all the things. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you sacrificed all that, like, blah, blah, blah. So I cling to him. But he didn't treat me like my father would, which is not saying that like your husband won't be your father. Like, he can't be. Nobody can be your dad at the end of the day. But your dad does still. That's the first man that you love. So my dad, he loved me. He made me smile. He made me laugh. He still does. He makes me laugh. He cares about me. He checks in on me. But he also gives me my space. These are things that I require now as a full-grown woman. Like, I require to be loved. One of my love languages is words of affirmation. I love to be, you know, in a sense, gassed up. Like, please tell me I'm beautiful. Please tell me, like, even though, but that's the difference between then and now. I know I'm beautiful on my own. Like, I know that I'm sexy. I know that whatever I put on, I still feel sexy. I know whatever I do, I still feel like I am the queen that I am because I am, not because somebody else is telling me. So if somebody tells me, that's just the extra drizzle and everything on top of it. But men in your life should be lifting you up, period. If they're doing anything to verbally abuse you, put you down, make you feel less than what you are by comparing you to other women or whatever the case may be, or even trying to compare you to their mom, like, you can't be their mom. But dads will definitely show you certain respect and certain love that you needed. Like, so if you do have a dad or father figure, please keep them around and make sure that they are being a representation of what you deserve in the future.
Because I can gas Brax up all day because that's what I do. And he can still probably feel less than, right? I think that's also why, like, one's own spiritual journey is important too. But that's also not enough, right? Because I was in the church. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when I think about, yeah, like, it's so interesting. They did really good. They did really good. And I think that's why I was so, you know, not ashamed of bringing Brax. Like, maybe shame could be it. I think that's why I was so ashamed of, like, you know, bringing Braxton into the world. Like, even at 28 years old with a career and money and a house, like, you thought I was, you know what I mean? Like, I was hiding for a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why I was so ashamed. I was legit ashamed because they did so good. Like, your parents did so good. How could you do this? I think that's also why we got to think about or rethink, reshift just sort of the narratives that we give children. Like, you're not a failure if. They never said you would be a failure if you, they never told me directly, like, Brittany, if you have a baby and, you know, you're not with his dad and you're not married yet, you're a failure. They never told me that, but clearly I internalized it. Because that's how I felt, like, legit. I felt like a failure. Like, you had one job, Brittany. You had one job, right?
So it was about 32, 33. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. I had called him the night before he passed. It was Father's Day. I called him really late because I was hanging out with a girlfriend of mine. And I remember saying, oh, Dad, I love you. You're the best father, all this kind of stuff. And I really felt that. I felt like in that moment, I realized that regardless of what the history was with my dad, that this was a man that I really loved. He really loved me. He looked out for me. And even to this day, I think about the fact that, you know, I got a call that he was dead the next morning. He died in his sleep. And even to this day, I just think about the fact that I'm so happy I got to tell him that. And I think about the fact that that little $100 that he put in my checking account, he didn't have insurance, and it paid for his funeral. I never touched it. So even in my mind, I think of that. You know, he knew. So I don't know what the story, the lesson is for that, but I can just say for me that, you know, sometimes you have to make your own decisions about the people that you're supposed to love.
Right.
So yeah, that's all I gotta say about that, I guess.
And you look for him and the people that you chose.
Yeah, I don't think so, because my daddy wasn't really present. I didn't really get to know my dad until I was like 30 years old, you know. I think that with my dad, because he was someone who, from my perspective, always wanted what was best for me. He was one of those people that he fought to be in my life. He also raised me to be fiercely independent. So, you know, he was the type of dad who showed me how to drive a 1978 like Suburban and parallel park with it. Everyone says I'm the best parallel parker. Yeah, I am, because I had this big truck that I had to learn how to parallel park with all my life. You know, changing tires, you know, the importance of changing your oil. So I think I can't think of any negative stuff I got from the relationship I had with him. I can only think of the positive stuff that I got from him. But it also made me be very clear and intentional about making my own judgments about people yourself. Because I think had I not took that time to build that relationship with my dad, I would have thought he was some monster. And to me, I mean, you know, I know people are different to other folks, but to me, he's not a monster. He never was.
That's one of the things that I think about. There were things that I kind of like figured out on my own that had nothing to do with what they told me, that I internalized. And so, yeah, maybe it is society, maybe it's a whole bunch, you know, friends, There has to be something in the family structure to address that, though. Like, yeah, therapy is one thing, but like something else. So actually, that's why this is so important, because like the tough stuff, the tough conversations to just validate. Like, so maybe this is it too. They affirmed the things that I did well. So much so that I aspired to do well. They did such a good job with that, making sure I knew what I should be doing, like, you know, what positive looked like. I wonder what it looks like to affirm and validate like the messy. You know, in your kids. Like, you're gonna do something, you're gonna mess up. Just so you know, you're all gonna mess up. But they don't make you any sort of less, you know what I mean? Like, to just remove the anxiety of messing up, because I think maybe that's what it is. Like, they affirm everything that I did good. Everything. Good grades, college, you know, doing stuff around the house. I have my own little mini businesses, right? Making t-shirts. Like, they affirmed all of that. You want a computer? Dad got your computer so you know how to type. Like, all of that. So much so that I would lie when things were not, like, with the negative things. Some of the stuff is actually, like, kid-related stuff that you shouldn't necessarily feel the need to. Right? And so maybe, what would it like to affirm and validate even the messiness in kids? Like, it's gonna happen. There's no getting around it. And so, just like I tell you every morning that you're great because of this and this is this, you're also still great amidst this, right? I think that's important. That's important. And that's maybe something that I could do differently. Right? I don't know what that looks like, right? I don't know what that looks like, but I think that's so important.
To affirm the bad.
Affirm
the messy, the not
right.
so good.
Yeah, affirm the same way we are. Affirm all the whole. Affirm the whole of our kids. Affirm the whole of our children. The whole, right? I think that's so important, so that they're not just striving to be like the good, in fear of or anxious of like being the bad. You know what I mean? Like it ain't even bad. It just is. It's human.